I was living in a house in Dallas where my sister Rebecca was. She lost her mind and was threatening my dad and threatening the cult, like going to go to the police, etc. So to quiet her, they carried out a blood atonement on her. And she's like pregnant with her second child, and she is probably 18, like I don't know. But anyway, she disappeared out of the house that we were living in, but that was normal for us. People came, people went. It was always in flux, and where we even lived was always in flux, and we were always moving around. So when she went missing, or not missing, nobody ever said she was missing. When she just wasn't in the house anymore, I had no idea that she had been executed.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Jaden Jeffs Podcast. Today I have Celia LeBaron with me, who comes from the Ervil LeBaron group, who is the daughter of Ervil LeBaron. Celia, if you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody anything you want them to know about you.
Sure. So again, like you mentioned, my name is Celia LeBaron. I am one of the daughters of the notorious Ervil LeBaron. I was born in a fundamentalist Mormon cult commune in Colonia, LeBaron, Chihuahua, Mexico. I am one of his Ervil's 51 children.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here. And I just want to give everybody a quick rundown. There is a documentary on Hulu called Daughters of the Cult, which you were a part of. And that kind of goes through the story of Ervil LeBaron. He believes in this blood atonement where he's killing a bunch of people kind of under the belief of Mormonism. So do you want to just give us a quick rundown on what blood atonement means in what it meant to your father and kind of where it comes from and kind of how you see it?
Sure. The doctrine of blood atonement was started in the early days of the Mormon Church. We were always taught it was a lot of Brigham Young, and it's in these books called the Journal of Discourses that I have right there. That's where we learned it from. And what that doctrine is it says that there are some egregious crimes, egregious sins that cannot be covered by the blood of Christ, and therefore the individual must atone with their own blood, meaning they have to die in order to atone for that, in order to get into heaven. And obviously, it's a terrible doctrine. That was one of the things about my father's cult. Can I say cult?
Yeah, you can say, don't be afraid of saying anything in this, honestly.
Because I use, words like murder and cult when you're talking about my family. Okay.
Yep, you can use all those words.
In my father's cult, that was a huge part of it. In addition to some others that other break-offs from the LDS faith have, like, polygamy and things like that, and the law of consecration. We obviously practice that as well. And then also the doctrine of blood atonement was practiced by my father. And basically, if you boil it down, what blood atonement is get rid of the people that leave the organization. So he justified ending their lives because they were a threat, because they knew too much. So he would just use that as, well, we need to help get them into heaven. So, and what they're leaving is so egregious that it can't be forgiven without them atoning. So they would convince us that that was better for the individual being blood atoned.
Yes. And I have a quick quote. I just want to give people some context from Brigham Young, from those books right there behind you. Brigham Young says, "All mankind love themselves, and let these principles be known by an individual, and he would be glad to have his blood shed. That would be loving themselves, even unto an eternal exaltation. Will you love your brothers or sisters likewise, when they have committed a sin that cannot be atoned for without the shedding of their blood? Will you love that man or woman well enough to shed their blood? That is what Jesus Christ meant." So
you literally gave me chills across my whole body. Is that not? It's twisted. It's such a twisted doctrine. Like, you would want somebody to take your life if it was going to get you into heaven, right? So you're doing them a benefit. Thank you. You did your research. I'm impressed with you. Very good job.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people don't understand the idea behind Mormonism or the power behind Mormonism. And I think your father is a good example of just how far this can go. And I think I really believe that we'll see this in the future too in other cults. But just because, the power behind Mormonism is so strong. Uh, but do you want to just kind of tell us some of your first memories in childhood and life? You didn't know that people were getting killed, and at first it probably wasn't happening, but maybe just kind of tell me like how you were born, how your childhood was a little bit, and then we'll get into some of this other stuff.
Sure. So I was originally born in the colony in Colonia LeBaron, Chihuahua, Mexico, where the cult was established by my grandfather. And so I lived there till I was about 3. And then basically after that, my life was constantly moving. It was sometimes we were in school, sometimes we weren't, but we moved to California, then we moved back to Mexico. I went to first and second grade in Ensenada in Baja California, where I learned to read in Spanish before I ever even learned to read in English. And then back to California, where I had to go into remedial reading because I didn't know how to read in English in 3rd grade. And then it was a lot of moving all the time. Like I'm in the process of writing my book at the very beginnings of writing my story. And I have a whole big timeline where I have to where was I living when I was this old? And what about that old? And when this happened, what house were we living in? And it's just like piecing it together because it was so fractured and it was marked by extreme poverty as well. My father's cult was not a wealthy cult, and any wealth there was went to the leaders. It wasn't to the children or the wives, and mothers had to be on welfare or dumpster dive to feed their children, and there was also a lot of child slave labor. So,
Yeah, and
very difficult
just
life.
just for context, what year were you born,
Mhm.
and kind of what years are you talking about growing up here?
Okay. So I was born in 1966 in the colony in Mexico, and I lived there until I was 3. And then we moved, to California, then back to Mexico, and then California again, where I had to have been about 8 to go into 3rd grade. And by then, the first blood atonement had already taken place.
By the time you
And
were 8?
by the time I was 8, should we talk about that yet?
If you want to, do you remember it all? Or did you know about it as a child, or was it kind of
No, but
unbeknown?
what I do remember is being in a Sunday school class in Ensenada, Mexico, with one of my dad's other wives, just in the living room. We never had like a church building after we left the colony. So we always just had church in people's living rooms. So, uh, and we were taught the story of Abraham and Isaac, where Abraham was ordered by God, supposedly, to go up into the mountain and take his innocent son's life. And I I was taught that story and this was when the blood atonement started happening. They were getting us ready, already preparing us for that. Although they didn't tell us that was what was going on, but they said, "You don't always understand what God tells you to do. You just have to be obedient." And then after she tells us the story of Abraham and Isaac, she gives us our crayons. Like I'm 6 years old. She gives us crayons and we had to draw a picture of Abraham with a dagger above his son, ready to plunge this dagger into his heart. Like these are little children getting prepared for carrying out blood atonement someday
Yeah,
and not questioning God, just being obedient like Abraham.
yeah, that's a story that I was taught growing up too, and I think a lot of fundamentalists or even Mormons, they like to distance themselves from this and say, "Oh, they are crazy, we're not crazy." But to me, I would just say that you're not that far away from it. Like they believe in the story of Abraham just like you did. I want to ask about your father, Ervil. Um, do you remember him in your early life, and how much did you have to do with him? Like, what do you remember as an 8-year-old or younger about your father, Ervil, who's going to end up committing all these murders?
So other people have different memories of him. Like I have a stepbrother that my mom, he's my half brother, but he's one of Ervil's stepsons who remembers being beaten by him very badly and really wanting to take his life, like to the point of like he was 12, I think. But I never have any memories like that. I remember being really excited when my dad would come around. This is me as a little tiny girl. We would run, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," when he would show up because he wasn't there a lot. Obviously, he had a lot of wives. He had, Wikipedia says 13, but it's really 14 wives. And so we didn't see him very much at all. And once he took his brother's life, blood atoned him, then he was always on the run. So we rarely saw him. But when we did, I remember being really excited. And he would take the little kids, he would bounce us on his knee, and he would give us a little bit of attention. He was really tall. He was about 6'3", 6'4". And he would take the children and put our backs to his back and then shimmy us down his back. And we just thought that was super fun. So those are memories I have of him. And then after that, I remember seeing him very, very little. Like after he started taking people's lives, then I almost never saw him. So I did remember seeing him again when I was 12, when we were moved to Veracruz for a time. And he called me into the room and sat me on his lap and was kissing my cheeks, just real sweet, real fatherly. And I remember he had stubble, and it was like, I wasn't used to that because I hadn't been around a male figure. And, but to him, it was natural. Like I'm his daughter, and he said my name, and I was like, oh, he knows my name. Like I was shocked that he actually used my name and knew it. He knew my name. He knew even my middle name, which was very surprising to me because that's not the name I normally use, but he remembered. Of course, my middle name is Christina with a K, so it's Celia Christina, and him saying, "Celia Christina," and I'm like, oh, how does he know? But that's one of his other wives' names. It goes Christina. I was named after her.
Yeah. So, do you have some sort of sympathy in your heart towards your father in some ways? Um, like looking back on
Oh,
everything, I mean, back when you were that young, he was just your father. You were just glad that he knew your name, right? I
yeah.
think I somewhat resonate with you about just being glad your father knows your name. I mean, I knew my dad, he obviously knew my name and stuff, but I didn't feel like I got a lot of attention from him. So in hindsight, I might look back and be like, oh, it's a bunch of bullshit. But the truth is, back then, I was trying to get recognition. I wanted something, you know?
As a child, you can't help but crave that. Like, I absolutely craved it. My mom used to tell me, again, I hadn't even seen him in years, but she would say I was going to be a princess in my dad's kingdom. And I just thought, ooh, but yes, to have him know who I was, and he's this big prophet, and he's so important and tall and amazing, it felt, it felt really good. I got a little piece of validation that I'm sure every child craves from the people that are supposed to, take care of them. Um, but as far as, so I've had tender feelings towards him, absolutely, but I was taught that too. Now, one of the things we learned growing up in polygamy, that I learned from one of my older sisters, and I see that my mom did practice that a little bit, is we were taught that the polygamist wives, it was their responsibility to make sure children felt close to their dad. That it wasn't the dad's responsibility, which is crazy, but it
Yeah.
was the wives' responsibility to talk up their dad and talk about how much they loved him and, just kind of feed that into them. And I think it did me good to feel like my dad knew me and loved me, even though he didn't practice it in real life. Like, there was very little connection with him after probably the age of 7. Like, that's why when I was 12, I was shocked that it's very surprised and pleased that he knew who I was. But there are those tender moments, but do I still have tender feelings towards him? Is that what you're asking me? Absolutely not. He was a monster.
Okay. Now, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that as children, we grow up so innocent, but we also grow up in the only world we know. When did you first start realizing that people were getting killed in your house? Like, how long had it gone on before you realized it? And then when did you start coming to terms with that, kind of?
I mean, it had to have been like 11 years, I think. The first blood atonement was his brother Joel. I'm trying to recall what year that happened. Give me a second. Oh man, I have it written down, but I don't know where it is right now. I think I was about 7 maybe when Uncle Joel was executed. And then I didn't really find out till I was probably 18, 19. That these
Okay.
things that we were running from the law about, which we were told it was just we're persecuted because we're God's chosen people. And that's why we have to constantly run and be afraid of police and be afraid of all kinds of authorities. Well, it turned out that there were things happening that were real and valid reasons to be, have the FBI raiding our house repeatedly. So, that was just the God's instruments of the devil coming and persecuting us
Yes.
when I was about 18 or 19 when I was like, oh, these things are they're coming after us because
Yeah.
there were terrible things that happened.
Okay. So I want to make sure the audience understands what's going on here. So back in the 1950s, there's this bigger group, um, and it's run by Ervil's father, correct?
Dyer LeBaron, his father.
Okay. And they have this church called the Church of the Firstborn of the Fullness of Times.
Yes.
And then Ervil splits off, and he takes about 125 people from the original like 1,000 people or so. And he starts this group called the Church of the Lamb of God. And he has kind of this main guy, patriarch, that helps him named Dan Jordan.
Yes.
And so you have Ervil and Dan Jordan kind of doing their own thing with these 125 plus minus people. And that's kind of just so I'm just trying to get people on the same page. That's kind of where this starts going downhill really bad.
That's when it really got treacherous. Was when Ervil broke off from his brother Joel, because they had been running the Church of the Firstborn of the Fullness of Times together, as Joel being number 1, he was the prophet, and then my father was his number 2. And then my father started getting jealous, I guess, and wanted more power and wanted to be in charge. So he looked through scriptures and priesthood authority and found a way to maneuver the doctrine to be like, oh, actually, I'm the one that's in charge, not my brother Joel. And of course, that was frowned upon. So he broke off. And then because Joel still claimed to be the one true prophet on the earth, and my father was saying, no, I'm actually the one true prophet on the earth, then that's you can't have two prophets on the earth according to the doctrine. So Ervil said he was a false prophet, and false prophets must be blood atoned because
Yeah,
they're leading people
especially
astray.
Right, especially if they're like going against God and who, that's where it kind of becomes a mess. So, uh, Ervil decides he's going to kill Joel, or that he needs to have his blood spilt so that in the next life he will have a chance at redemption. It's kind of how the doctrine works. And I think that and I want to ask you about this, I think he genuinely did believe this in his mind. Like, it wasn't like, I'm going to use this idea to justify killing. It was more like, no, we need to kill him so that he has a chance.
So one thing we need to mention is I do say my father was a monster. He was very, very mentally ill, and I'm sure he had layers of mental illness. Do I think he believed he was a prophet? Yeah. I think he, in his deranged mind, and with so many scriptures that you can take and maneuver and make, to support whatever you decide, he was able to do that and convince himself and a lot of others that he had the truth, and he believed it himself. I am convinced. Yes.
You're about 8 years old when he decides to kill Joel. And then after that, does he kind of become the leader over the group? Or what happens with Joel's group? Do more people come and kind of follow Ervil after this? Or
Well, he did continue to try to gain followers from Joel's group. People were afraid of him. Like, they had no interest. They're like, how can you be a good prophet if you're out here taking people's lives, people that we believe is our prophet and that we love and adore? And so some slithered through, I guess you would say, and joined with my dad, but the majority of them did not. And instead, my uncle Verlin was the one left in charge of the Church of the Firstborn. The Church of the Firstborn of the fullness of times, if you say the whole thing, but we just usually refer to it as the Church of the Firstborn. So the firstborners now were being led by Verlin. And my father just had his little ragtag group of people that
okay,
they were following him.
yes. So Ervil decides to turn himself in, and he goes to the Mexican authorities. He turns himself in. He ends up getting convicted of murder, but then a higher court overturns it in Mexico, and he's kind of free. So now he's kind of got away with the murder of Joel, and this kind of leads them on to the next murders.
And
Is
this
that
makes him even more convinced that God is on his side and God is looking after him. And I think his followers, it made them more believers that God got him released from prison after he got convicted. So, yeah, I think it increased their faith.
Yeah, it looks to me like every time Joel or Ervil got away with something, then it just like emboldened him in a serious way.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're kind of living in Denver, Mexico, Houston, California, all through this time.
Moving around a lot. Mm-hmm.
But at some point, Ervil decides, okay, I need to take out Rulon Allred,
Well, first he wanted to take out Verlin,
who was Joel's successor.
Joel's successor, his other brother. So he tried hard to take out Verlin, and so that led to the Los Molinos raid. The Los Molinos raid was where he sent teenage boys quite often. Now with Joel, he sent adult men to carry out that hit. Pretty much mostly after that, he was sending a lot of teenagers usually. So he sent some teenage boys that threw Molotov cocktails, and in this community where there were followers of the firstborn group, and they thought that that's where Verlin was. And so they figured they would smoke him out, and then they'd be able to take his life and blood atone him. But he wasn't there. So it was just a disaster, just a lot of innocent people that were just caught in the fray and were injured or died, and definitely terrorized. Um, so that's what happened next, was Los Molinos. And then he continued to try to get his brother Verlin taken out. So that's when the idea came up, and he was sending out pamphlets. He was writing letters. He was sending warnings to different leaders, different groups, even presidents of the United States. Like, he was cuckoo, like absolutely deranged.
Sounds a
And
little bit like Dad.
hmm,
I just said it sounds a little bit like my dad.
yeah, we had some really bad prophet fathers, didn't we?
We did.
Really bad ones. So, so my father sent a letter to Rulon Allred and called him to repentance and said, "You are acting as a false prophet. You need to bend the knee to me and send your tithing money to me." And of course, Rulon Allred has quite a large group of people. So he's trying to take over, his dad's old group, the firstborners, and he just thinks he needs to be in charge because he wants to be in charge of the world ultimately, I think, but certainly the other fundamentalist groups out there. He wants to capture, their interest in him and follow him. So once he got the idea to send these letters to Rulon, is it Rulon or Rulon? I think it's Rulon.
I don't know. Does it matter? Rulon?
I don't know.
Rulon?
I'd like to give him the respect of using his
Yeah.
name correctly,
Yeah,
but
my grandfather is also named Rulon.
mhm,
But we call him Rulon. I don't know.
Rulon. Okay. So so he sends a letter to Rulon ordering him, and he goes to the police too and reports it. But I don't think anybody took it that seriously quite yet. Some people were afraid. His idea was to take out Rulon and try to get the people to follow him. And then also at Rulon's funeral, he knew Verlin would come because I don't know how many people know this, but back in the day, all the different fundamentalist groups had overlap. Like, we have,
Yes.
my dad was married to a Barlow, my dad was married to a Johnson. Like, there were overlaps in the groups. And then as they became more and more secluded and cultish, they broke away and weren't in touch as much. But back in those days in the 50s, when they still were, friendly towards each other, Verlin was friends with Rulon Allred.
Yes,
So
and the prophet of the FLDS was Roy Johnson, and he was down with the LeBarons in Mexico for a while. And
they would go
yeah,
down there
like
to hide sometimes.
Rulon Allred and my grandpa, Jaden Jeffs, and all these other cult leaders, they kind of all talked to each other during
Mhm.
this time.
Yeah. By the time the killings were happening, they were very secluded from one another. But again, Rulon already had this. Yeah, Rulon Allred already had this relationship with Verlin, and so my father was certain that Verlin would come to the funeral. And so his idea was take out Rulon, try to, take that group away from him, take his followers, and then at the funeral, where Verlin would be, to also blood atone him. So
Yes, and then the guys that went to do that, they kind of get scared, and there's a whole bunch of police there, so they kind of pull back.
they saw
Uh,
it as a mission and couldn't do it. And one of the young men that was sent to do that, again, they got scared away. They're like, we can't. There's too many people. We're not going to get through to Verlin without going through all these people and getting stopped and killed by the police. So they didn't carry that one out. But one of the one of the young men that was in that, he ran away. He was afraid of the consequences for not carrying out that hit. So he literally ran away from the group because that was the risk, is if you didn't carry out my father's orders that were straight from God, then you yourself could be severely punished.
yes, and I want to take a minute to just explain to people, and maybe you can kind of give us some of your insight on you being a young person at the time. Uh, a lot of times when I look at these groups or when I look at my own story, you see a situation like this where people are going to kill other people. And it's almost like you're in a different reality. I mean, you are. And then when you come to realize it, you're like, oh my God, all this stuff happened. Like, what the hell have we been doing? Um, and I just want people to understand to the degree that, Ervil and his group was in a different reality.
Yeah.
Like they just totally believe this in their own reality. And when they finally wake up, you start realizing, oh, we're dealing with life and death here. This isn't just like some playground or anything. It's like, yeah, this is life and this is it.
Right.
Uh, so maybe you can just like talk a little bit from your young mind of how you looked at all this.
So when I was young, I didn't know any of it was happening. When
Right.
I was really young, I didn't even know we were different than anybody else in the world. I thought we were just normal. And when I was in kindergarten in California, I didn't know I was any different than any other person. Once I moved to Mexico and then came back and couldn't read in English, then I was like, oh, we are different. We're a different type of people. And I was starting to get more brainwashed into like, oh, we're God's chosen people, etc. And one thing I want to for people to understand, which is really hard to understand, and that's why I connect with you and other people that have escaped and gotten out of very dangerous, harmful cults, is brainwashing is real. Like,
Yes.
as a child, especially when you're really young or when it starts from your birth, and so in my case, you really have this is your reality. And it is definitely an alternate reality. We're not living in the real world. We are living by our own rules and what we are taught, and we are God's chosen. We are kind of above the law in a way because we obey God's law before we obey man's law. So if man's law goes against what God orders, then that we're not obligated to follow it. And anyway, so for me personally, the brainwashing was very intense, and I was very convinced that what we had was true and real. And I really feel like, especially when you're born into something like this, children naturally, it's part of our survival instinct, is to connect with our family, to connect with our parents and cling to them for safety and for guidance and to teach you and grow you as a human being. So it is a necessary part of survival. And so I gravitated to that. Whatever my mom said, I believed. I loved my mom, and she taught me to love my dad, even though again I didn't really know him, so it was kind of fake, but I think it was good for me that it, at least I was taught that somebody loved me. But those that are around you, you're relying on them when your brain is developing. So I have a lot of heart for people that had no choice in what families they were born into. And some of us were born into like the worst possible family dynamics, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, we were just all these ragamuffin kids being abused and brainwashed and tr- trafficked for labor, and even as wives from a very young age. I got a little bit lucky there, but not a lot of my sisters. So yeah, it's brainwashing is intense and it's real, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I guess I like to tell people, imagine if you grew up in a family that 100% believed the earth was flat.
Yep.
And this was like die hard for them. Anytime when you were 2 or 4 or 6, they're like, no, the earth is flat. You got it. Like this, if you don't believe that, you'll like it'll be to your detriment, and you can't be a part of us and all this stuff. And so the child gets older and they see more and more things about the earth being round, and they're like, no way. Anyway, and slowly and they're pushed back against this. They push these thoughts out of their mind about the earth being round, and finally one day they come to realize maybe the earth actually is round, and it just like blows their mind, and they're in a whole new world.
Because the problem is when in these cults, you have children that are malleable, and, you can convince them of whatever, because they are there to trust you, to guide them and direct them and to teach them. But eventually our brains get fully developed, and we can then think for ourselves. And we come to different conclusions, like the earth is round, or killing people is wrong, or I don't want to live polygamy, or whatever it is. So we get to then make our own choices. But when you're a child, you don't have any choice. You have nowhere to go. You have no escape. So your best bet is to just blend in with this family and do the best you can. And I was very compliant, so it served me well in the cult when I had no option to be anywhere else. I had no escape. I had no means to take care of myself or get away. So I got beaten less than other people did, like my squirrely little brothers that weren't as hard, wanted to play instead of work and stuff like that when they were 7 or 8. That's the problem, is eventually your brain is fully developed and you can think for yourself. And then the brainwashing is not as powerful.
Yeah. So as you get older, how do you process the idea that, God might be asking your family to kill other people? Or my question is, are you accepting that this might be right before you're kind of questioning the whole thing? Or do you question the whole thing first and then realize what's happened? So is it like, okay, we had to kill these people. How is it right? How can I make this make sense? Or is it like, oh my God, we killed people?
Yeah. So first of all, the brainwashing started from my first memory is I'm 6 years old, learning about killing people for God and being obedient to God. We're also drilled on the 10 Commandments, Old Testament. Oh my gosh, Ervil and Dan, who were the two in charge of the Church of the Lamb of God, just loved, they called it the civil law of God. And that was the 10 Commandments. And we would go into the Old Testament and we would memorize them. And in Sunday school, we'd get a marshmallow. I have to tell a funny story. It's not funny. It's kind of awful. But we were taught the 7th commandment, I think it is, if I remember correctly, is thou shalt not commit adultery. So you're not supposed to sleep with someone is how it was described to us. You're not supposed to sleep with a boy or a man. Like, that's what I knew, except, your husband. And we, of course, were in extreme poverty. So we just slept on living room floors. And one time I woke up and I was cold and I saw I have a sister with red hair. Just
okay.
so I like your red hair. So I just was a little bit older. And I have a daughter with red hair too, by the way.
Cool.
So I saw her red hair poking out. And so I went and snuggled up next to her for warmth. And then when I woke up, I realized it was my redheaded brother. I thought I had committed adultery. Like, it was, so I was like, I wouldn't tell anybody either. Like, I just got away as quick as I could. And it was just on the living room floor where everybody else was. But I just got away as fast as I could and thought, oh my gosh, did I break the commandment? And we were taught the penalties for breaking these commandments. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but it was drilled into us from a very young age. So many of the penalties for breaking these commandments is death. You stone people to death.
Yes, and I want people to understand one of the reasons that I ask people about the sexual restrictions on them as much as I do is because this was also my understanding. Like, I was very much raised with the idea that it is better to have your head severed from your body than it is to touch a girl wrong before, like, God puts you together with her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I really believe that. Like, I was on my knees asking God, like, before you ever allow me to, like, touch a girl inappropriately, will you, like, take my life first?
Yeah.
So that was like a very sincere prayer when I was a young boy.
Oh, I'm sorry. That breaks my heart. It really
well,
does. And
well,
I
and
understand it.
yeah, and I just want people to understand, like, where you're coming from, and that these ideas about when you're young, your sexual uh restrictions. That's when you tell the story about, oh, I was 5 and I had to, like, hurry leave, or hurry get away from the boy or whatever. Uh, to me, I'm like, yeah, I get that.
Right. I mean, I wanted to be pure. I was taught that I was born under the covenant and that I was a celestial spirit. And, because I was born to my father who was a celestial being, and that I wanted to maintain my purity and to be just holy and devout. Like, I was super, super brainwashed. And should I tell you something? Let me see if you can see it. If you look at my cabinet up here, do you see I've got a little naked lady up there?
Oh yeah.
So so down here, further over here in my I have those little pieces of, like, chain. Do you see the
Yeah.
marble chain right there? So, that represents, because this whole side is cult related. All this side of my
Okay.
cabinetry is cult related. So those are the chains of our slavery, because we were
Oh,
literal child slaves in the cult. So this all is about my cult upbringing. So there's the chains, and then this little girl up here represents freedom.
okay.
Right
Got it.
above the Journal of Discourses. That's intentional. So,
Okay.
not that I'm a hugely immoral person. I'm literally not.
I
I'm
know. No
like,
judgment here.
I'm probably way too pure for this world still. Because some of that stuff stuck with me, and I did not put those restrictions on my children. I try to be a lot more sex positive with my children and not filled with shame and all that. And I don't think they feel that way, but I was raised, there was a lot of shame around, like, you're supposed, especially girls, you had to save yourself. And here's a funny thing, and I talk about it in the documentary. The first man I ever romantically kissed was the man I married. You know
hmm
what I'm saying? And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm out of the cult now, but still that sticks with you. So, anyway, it is purity culture is like, it was definitely a part of our upbringing, and saving yourself for the one that God ordained for you to marry was
Yes.
very important.
Yes. Uh, so I just want to ask about this question about killing again. So as you come to find out, and I'm not exactly sure what age you were, but did you come to accept that they were going to accept that they had done right in killing people? Or did you come to accept that, uh, oh, they killed people and that's wrong? Like,
Yeah.
did you justify it in your mind before you decided, oh, that's wrong?
I did start answering that question, then I went off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Sorry
Oh,
about that.
you're good.
So, again, raised death penalty, blood atonement, death every day in Sunday school. We were taught the 10 commandments. You commit adultery, you die. You rebellious children get stoned to death. Homosexuality everybody's stoned to death that isn't living in this very rigid, perfect lifestyle. And again, my goal was always to live it and not need any blood atoning. Um, and so that was harped on and harped on and harped on. So I believed in it. I believed that it was God ordained. I mean, it's in the Bible. And even in the Book of Mormon, like, doesn't Laban get his head lopped off so that you take the
Yes.
plates? I mean, there's a lot of death and a lot of justification for God's people to take lives. It's all over the Old Testament, and certainly in the Book of Mormon. A lot of wars and a lot of battles are fought. So killing for God is just what I thought was normal and good. Again, it's not just Mormon books, it's the actual Bible.
Yeah.
Supposedly a lot of Americans believe in. And I'm just like, they're just not believing it fully. They're
Right.
wrong for not believing that this is the way to be. So do I believe in the death penalty? Do I believe in blood atoning? Do I believe all of that? 100% yes. However, I didn't find out that we were actually carrying any of them out until I was like 18 or 19, within a year of my actual running away from the cult. And when I first found out that my sister Rebecca, who I was about 10, not quite 11. I was just almost to turn 11. I was living in a house in Dallas where my sister Rebecca was, and she had lost her mind because there's mental illness that runs in my family, and my father had it in spades, layers of it, I believe. He was never diagnosed, of course, but he she lost her mind and was threatening my dad and threatening the cult, like gonna go to the police, etc. So to quiet her, they carried out a blood atonement on her. And she's like pregnant with her second child, and she is probably 18, like I don't know. But anyway, she disappeared out of the house that we were living in, but that was normal for us. People came, people went, it was always in flux, and where we even lived was always in flux, and we were always moving around. So when she went missing, or not missing, nobody ever said she was missing, when she just wasn't in the house anymore, I had no idea that she had been executed. And it was when I learned, I think I was 18, almost 19, when I figured out, I read some court documents that quoted the person who strangled her. I read that and my blood ran cold. Like, I was nauseous and I was ill. And when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, I just somehow knew it was true, because by then, my brain had developed a little bit. And though I'd never been told what happened to Rebecca and why I never saw her again after that, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is true. She was blood atoned. And it, I, my mind, it really messed with me really bad. And I had been trained all my life that killing people for breaking commandments and leaving the truth and all of that was good and part of God's plan. But when it hit me in reality that, oh my gosh, that actually happened, I was not okay. I was sickened. And it made me really afraid too, like, oh my gosh. Um, and the thing is, when my dad died and things fractured, there were groups that were killing one another. And anyway, so
Well,
I wasn't okay with it. I was not in reality okay with it. Even though I'd been trained all my life that that was normal and good and God's way, it didn't hit me well. And within a year, I ran away.
yeah. And I think one thing I would also explain to people, maybe about the mindset, is for me, when I was in the FLDS, if somebody told me that somebody had died versus somebody had like eternally sinned to damnation, I would take the death way sooner. Like, give it to me. Like, thank God they're in heaven now. They didn't sin to death. Like, they didn't go commit adultery. They didn't go turn against the prophet or anything like that. So I'll take it. And Was that a little bit of your mindset early in your life? Like it's better to uh, die than it is to.
I mean, that's what we were taught. So I believed it on the surface, but not in action. I
Yeah,
don't think in action it ever felt like doable, even though I knew it was right and good. It was like I didn't know now on this earth it was time to start doing that. I thought it was like in the future, someday later. I didn't understand that this is what was happening in our day today. You know what I'm saying? I
yeah,
thought it was in the
right,
millennium when Christ returns and we're living all of his laws. And I don't know. I thought it was
yeah.
later. I didn't know it was now.
And to be clear, like most of these fundamentalist groups, they still believe in this stuff, but that's exactly what they say. They say it's in the millennium. That
Yeah.
will be how it is in the millennium. Um, let's get in. Let's tell a little bit more of this story. So, uh, initially, it's Joel that gets killed. Then he's trying to kill Vernal, and then he decides to kill Rulon Allred. Can you kind of tell us this story or summarize this story about how he kills Rulon Allred?
Yeah. So, my father just picked two teenage girls that, let me just say, one of them was 18 and I think one of them was 19. They were both girls who had grown up from a young age. Now, they weren't born into it, but their parents joined when they were really young, like 5, 6, 7. I don't know exactly how old, but really young. So brainwashed fully. Again, they don't have any other option. They're just living their lives in this cult. Both of them each of them was forced to marry an older man with a lot of wives. Rena was forced to marry Ervil, my father. She was his youngest wife, and she was just 16. And again, girls don't have a choice, and they don't have a voice, and they just have to be obedient and compliant and subservient. So even though she didn't like him, didn't want him, like I don't know how old he was when they got married, but probably 40 and already has all these wives, and he's just not a nice man. And she did not want to marry him and she wasn't attracted to him. But she had no choice. So she had to do it. Uh, and the other girl was forced to marry Dan Jordan. And she rebelled. She was told to marry him. Rena married Ervil when she was 16. And the other the other teenager in this plan had been ordered to marry Dan Jordan when she was 15 and wouldn't and rebelled as best she could. And then they finally broke her down and she complied. And when she was 17, finally, she married Dan, who was certainly 40 by then, and yucky and gross and mean, like a mean. He was a rageaholic. He would curse and swear. He was unkind, very verbally and emotionally abusive and physically abusive. And anyway, these girls, again, have no power, have no control, have no say. So they were ordered to go carry this out. And they're, of course, terrified. And it is not their choice. This is not what they would have wanted to do, but it was ordered by God. So they didn't feel like they had a choice. And so Rena was the one that actually was able to pull the trigger. The other one, she couldn't. She froze. I heard she shot into the ceiling, but couldn't actually bring herself to carry out the hit. And anyway, so that's what happened. They did it and have to
And
live with
so
that to this
you're,
day.
yeah. So you're over in Denver at this time, right? You and a bunch of your siblings and your dad's wives and whatever. Um, and at some point they come and raid you over there in Denver. Is that right?
Yeah, I can remember multiple times in my life where the FBI came in and would raid us looking for our dad. And yes, they did raid us in Colorado, and we're just little kids sleeping on the living room floor, filthy living room floor, might I add. We did not had no luxury. Um and we were just like peeking out at these FBI agents who are like, stay there and be quiet, just trying to keep us out
Yeah.
of the way, basically, while they raid and search for the people they want to pick up. And in my house, they didn't find anybody they were looking for there. But in other places, they were raiding in lots of different places. It was a big operation. But
Yeah, and
in Mexico, too. Like, it was, I think, in Mexico and the US, it was a concerted effort.
mhm. And you were saying how one of the big things you did is say, "Oh, I don't know," whenever.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say that's just what we were taught in the
No
FLDS, right?
way.
Right? You just say, I don't know."
Hmm.
You just ignore. You act like you're dumb, you know?
They would they would sit us down and drill us. Like an older brother or somebody else would ask us, point to you and say, "Are you hungry?" And we would have to say, "I don't know." "What is your name?" "I don't know." "Who's your dad?" "I don't know." "Where's your mom?" Like, we were not allowed to know anything, not even whether we were hungry. They would just make it very clear. Everything is, "I don't know."
Yeah. So when Rulon Allred gets killed by Ervil orders it, is this kind of the beginning of the cult collapsing in your mind, or?
No, I don't think so. I feel like it really collapsed when my dad died. That
Uh-huh.
was the beginning of the end because
Okay.
it still stayed strong. Um,
Well, tell us a little bit about when you're in Denver. You're working under Dan Jordan, and are you just like uh doing some kind of warehouse work for him? How
mhm.
old are you guys? How many kids are working? What is
So,
life like?
yeah, so my mom lived with two of her sister wives in a 1,500 square foot house. And between the three wives, and my mom tended other wives' children because one of my dad's wives died of cancer. And so my mom had a couple of her kids, and another one of my dad's wives was in prison. So my mom took care of some of those kids. So we had 20 children in a house. That's why we slept on the living room floor. There just weren't enough beds. I think the moms had beds, but the children just slept on the floor. And they had a warehouse. The way our besides, welfare fraud and things like that, the way the cult supported itself was by fixing up old appliances, taking in broken appliances like washers, dryers, refrigerators, dishwashers and stuff, taking them in, refurbishing them, and then selling them back. And so that's where the slave labor was, and it was incredibly abusive. Children were taken out of school. Some of my siblings, some of my brothers, and even my sisters didn't go past second, third, fourth grade, and they were forced to just work full time in the warehouse. Now, Dan Jordan's children were going to school and living normal lives. In fact, Dan Jordan owned 3 homes in the country for his family that were bought on the backs of the labor of Ervil's children. But Ervil was on the run, or he was in jail, or after he died, Dan Jordan could do whatever he wanted. And he was extremely abusive and took advantage of the situation, didn't care at all about Ervil's children. And made sure his children were taken care of, fed better, had better circumstances as far as their living conditions, were going to school like normal children, did after school activities even. My best friend, which was one of Dan's daughters, she was like in debate club, and she was in Future Farmers of America and owned a cow. And so they were pretty well taken care of, not because he worked, not because he took care of them, but because he had all of Ervil's children as slave labor and wives. So his wives had their little homes in the country living their nice little lives with their children. We had 3 wives in a 1,500 square foot house, sleeping on the floor, eating mush and beans. And maybe we got 20. I do recall specifically that, and this was back in the 70s. Yeah, it was in the 70s. We sometimes got for the whole house $20 to feed all these children for a week. So we did dumpster diving behind the grocery stores. We got welfare sometimes, food stamps or whatever was available back then. So, and then again, 12-hour days, 6 days a week in a warehouse, and then all day church on Sunday. So very controlled, very limited exposure to outside influences, very, like you had zero control over your life. You weren't paid either. They, I guess, paid the rent on the house you lived in and gave you $20 to buy food. But we had to steal out of the Goodwill boxes for clothing. We couldn't even go buy them with quarters at the Goodwill because we had too many kids. And we weren't given money. So we just ended up stealing them out of the Goodwill boxes and, again, behind the grocery store dumpsters for food. So that's how we had to exist under Dan Jordan. Very abusive. And he would scream and yell and order you to work and work harder. And if you would be publicly beat at times. Like on Sunday, they would have public beatings for those that were rebellious, and 39 lashes for if you did not obey and weren't carrying your load, I guess. And these are, again, 7, 8, 10-year-old children, teenagers. It was extremely abusive and very, very controlled.
Well, if your childhood you were doing something better than working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, then I guess you probably had a happier childhood than some of these polygamous kids.
Yeah, I'm not even saying I wasn't happy. I thought I was serving God. So I did this willingly. I was brainwashed. I thought I was helping the kingdom of God move forward. So I didn't even let myself be miserable because we were taught that feeling sorry for yourself is the first sign of insanity. And so you were not allowed to have negative thoughts or complain. You had to stay. We didn't do the keep sweet, pray and obey. We didn't have that term, but it was basically that.
Yeah. And going insane is kind of a sign that you as an individual aren't putting in individual exertion enough. You're not working hard enough. You're not being active enough. You're not praying enough.
It had to do with, like, you're letting the devil in if you lose your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that's just how it still is in a lot of these fundamentalist groups. They still think that way, so.
Yeah, that's so sad because mental illness is real.
Yeah.
Some of my siblings inherit it from my dad. They're not violent like him, thank God, but they struggle and their lives are much harder because of it. It's really sad.
There's this interesting part in the documentary where they go down to arrest Ervil. They end up arresting Dan Jordan instead.
Even though Ervil said, yes, I'm Ervil. They're like, nah, you can't be Ervil, and let him go.
Yeah.
More proof that God is on his side.
Exactly. And anyway, at some point they end up getting Ervil, and he comes up and he's put in prison. And after about a year or so, he dies. I wanted to ask.
He was caught by the federales in Mexico, but they were trying to get him on both sides of the border because he carried out a lot of hits. We only went over a couple of them here, a few of them, but he'd done a lot of really, really bad stuff. So the federales caught him, and then he was extradited to the U.S., where he went on trial. And there were a lot of people that testified against him. One of the ones that ran away when he didn't get the hit on Berlin at the funeral, he was testifying against my dad and other people that defected. But my older brother, Isaac, testified against him. He was in a meeting when he was just 12 about organizing a hit. And so he testified against his own father. And that's what I've heard really got him convicted, was his own son testifying against him. So he was convicted. And then he went totally insane. Like, he was already a cuckoo, but he went way off the deep end. And then he just started ordering everybody needs to die. He just wrote revelation after revelation after revelation about all the different people that went against him, went against God, and needed to die.
And how do you feel through this time? Because you don't know that much about your father, and you're kind of just over under Dan Jordan in Denver. How old were you when he died?
I was 15 when my father
Okay.
died.
And how do you feel about this when you get this news? How does your mother feel about this? How does this
Oh,
change your
yeah.
situation?
I remember bursting into tears. Like, I was extremely sad. I still thought he was my dad, he was a prophet, and that someday I was going to live in his kingdom. I don't know. I had ideas about, reconnecting with him, and I was devastated. And I remember hearing first my sister Lillian sobbing in the other room when she got the news, and she's the one that came out and told me. Sobbing, sobbing, sobbing. Yeah, everybody was devastated. He was our prophet. Um, yeah, it was really, really sad. Honestly, we were all still very confused and believers. So many of us anyway, but yeah.
And did this change your life at all in the sense of where
Mhm.
you were living? Did you move somewhere else
Mhm.
or?
Yeah. So what happened was, before my dad died, we had moved from Colorado under Dan. We had moved to Houston, and we were living under Mark with Mark and Lillian in Houston, where it was a lot better circumstances. Lillian was my half sister, so she actually loved the LeBaron children and loved my mom and cared about us. And there's still disparity. Like, when the people in charge generally are going to get more than the people that are not in charge. So there's still some people that are bitter about that. But they were way, way better and more caring than Dan Jordan was. Dan Jordan didn't give a shit about Ervil's children. Lillian and Mark, they did care and tried to do right by us in a lot of ways. But then Dan convinced my mom to move back to Denver. And that's when my sister Anna ran away. She's the one that wrote the book, The Polygamous Daughter. And so she was like, I don't want to go back to Dan Jordan. Like, she remembered how awful it was to be under him. So she just kind of ran away and said, I want to stay here. So when mom can leave, she kind of got wind that mom was going to go back to Denver. So she's like hid away until mom left her and went back to her 13-year-old daughter. That's how brainwashed she was. So she left without finding her daughter because she couldn't find her. So we went back to Denver under Dan, and it was even worse than it was before. He swore it was going to be different. It was going to be better. Anyway, he made all these promises, and of course my mom fell for it, and it was worse. And then Dan kind of reorganized the church and rebaptized everybody. I remember he gave me a patriarchal blessing, which I'd never had before. That was actually really a sweet moment. But and then he was sending people into the mission field, which was Utah, to try to convert Mormons to his new cult. And of course that was not very successful. And so, but yeah, it did change my life. Now my dad, he didn't have to answer to anybody now. Dan Jordan didn't have to answer to anybody. So he was the one in charge, and it became more brutal and worse for us. But my mom stayed. She still believed.
So you at some point get told to come on a mission, right? Uh, how does that go? And were you just like knocking on doors over here in Salt
Mm-hmm.
Lake, or?
2 and 2, 2 by 2, with a companion, a female companion, and we had just the teenagers. I think when I was first sent, I was sent for a summer, like I was 17, and then I was sent again. They made me skip my senior year to go and serve a longer mission, and we would just go door to door. Yeah. And we didn't have the badges, but I'm sure we looked similar, modest dress, always dresses. We weren't no slacks or anything for the girls. Um, and we went door to door and sat in people's living rooms. And of
It was
course,
just
we
like,
weren't saying, oh, we're polygamous. We did not do that. We did meet up with someone that was kind of from the FLDS, but he wasn't living the life. It was like in Sandy, Utah or something. And anyway, we got wind that he was from the FLDS group, which was interesting. And he even said, oh, yeah, I saw these little polygamous girls coming down the street, meaning he recognized that we were from a polygamous group. But we didn't openly say that. We didn't even say we were from a church. We said we're from the Liberty Education Association, and we were there to teach everybody about the civil law of God, which was the 10 Commandments, and ask them to start paying tithing to support the work. And eventually, after, like on the 10th lesson, then we would bring up polygamy and how the Mormon church has apostatized from the truth and stuff like that. But that was way deeper into it.
okay, got it.
Most of our people did, what did we call them? Investigators is what we call them. Most of our investigators never got that far.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I imagine not. It's
we
probably,
didn't have a great religion to bring him to, but I went with all my heart, mind, and strength and tried to convert people. I thought it was God's will.
yeah.
I did. I was very prayerful and believed it.
At some point you tell about this story in the documentary where you get this pretty bad beating right around this time. Is this what ended your mission, or?
So in the mission field, because there weren't a lot of converts, because it was a bullshit religion. Anyway, we couldn't convert a lot of people. So what Dan did, like I said, he was brutal and he was horrible. So what he would do is he would periodically show up in the mission field and accuse someone of not having the Spirit of God and send them home in disgrace and bring someone to replace them that, was going to carry out anyway, no matter what they did, they never got a lot of people joining. So, but they just kept finding scapegoats for the reason. So at one point they decided it was my fault. So Dan, I should not have said her name.
Okay, I'll pull them out.
Okay. So Dan and one of his wives, his head wife, I guess you might say, they came up and brought my mom to the mission field. And I didn't realize why she was there. I didn't understand why they brought my mom because she wasn't a missionary. But after the end of the day, when we were debriefing of, who we talked to and what was said and how many people we visited with that day and how many doors we knocked on, Dan made some kind of a joke that was a little bit off color. And I feel like I'm a missionary. I'm a grown up, and just kind of playfully trying to be a little bit sassy, I just said, very funny, and rolled my eyes. But it was literally with no bad intent. I thought it was funny, and I thought I was being sassy in a not a bad way. Like, no disrespect was intended, but it was taken very, very badly. So that night, my companion and I, we had little twin beds next to each other in one of the rooms in the finished basement of the mission house. And we go to bed, and I hear the door open, and my mother stand next to my bed and tell me, roll over. And so I don't know what's happening. I don't know what this is about, but I am compliant and I'm obedient, and I rolled over, and they said, "This is for disrespecting the prophet," and started beating me. And I was beaten 39 lashes, which is biblical because you're not supposed to go over 40 lashes according to God. So 39 lashes was the limit, and they beat me till I was bruised and bloody. And yeah. So, and anyway, there were a lot of other things that happened. A lot of screaming. Oh my gosh, a lot of profanity. Like, "You motherfucking bitch, you spirit of God, you're keeping it from being in the mission field." Like, I'm looking back now and I'm thinking, how is it they think they have the spirit of God talking to people, screaming at people like that? And I was very sincere believer and a follower. Like, my heart was truly in. But again, I'd also heard, it was like months prior to that I learned about my sister Rebecca getting murdered. And so anyway, I was devastated. Like, I was like, "What do you mean I don't have the spirit of God? I pray constantly. I'm studying. I'm trying to convert people." It was like there was nothing right or true about anything they were saying or doing to me. But they literally made me leave all my clothing. They said I could take one dress, and his wife told me which dress I could take too. She was like, "You can take the gray dress, and then so that you can have something to wear to church, but leave all your other clothing behind for the next person coming to replace you," because I didn't deserve anything at that point. And then sent me home in disgrace.
It's very interesting that your mother was kind of a part of that. How do you look at that, and how do you see the justification in her mind? Like, why is she kind of pushing this to its limits?
So I just will say that she did not love it. She deep down knew it wasn't right, but also couldn't she was just brainwashed and
Yeah,
weak-minded, and she had no power. Like, she literally had no power in this organization. And she gave me the first 20 lashes, and they were not as hard. She made it seem like she was hitting really hard, but she wasn't. It was when Dan's wife took over that I was blistered and bruised, and actually she broke skin.
I that it's really interesting how, as humans, a lot of these, I think of my own dad's wives, and I think that it's pretty easy to get into a situation where life has been hard and you might be a victim of a circumstance. Like, maybe you're a wife that got married into this bad situation, but something gets a hold of you. I don't know what exactly. And it doesn't matter how good of a person you are, how, like, what you think about yourself. You're going to, like, if you can justify just beating somebody, then it's like, let's do it. And it releases something that, I don't know, but I think it's pretty common in these groups where even victims have these times where they almost become the,
Traders.
yeah.
And I did bring that up to my mother way later, after we knew it was a cult. After everybody died or killed each other off or imprisoned or whatever, and the whole cult fell apart. I think the official ending is like 1992. So I was able to rebuild a relationship with my mom to a certain degree. She joined another cult, but whatever. But they actually let her talk to us because they were hoping she'd bring more of her daughters in. So she apologized to me. So that was really healing for me. And she said she was really angry at our father for deceiving her the way he did. So
Yeah.
I I called her to task a little bit. No, I wasn't ruthless because I love my mom, but I did call her out a little bit on allowing her. And I even said, how did you allow this? How did you allow us to like be sent to Mexico without her and things like that, which I know we haven't talked about here, but we were shipped out to help other families and stuff when we were younger. And I was like, how could you allow that? And she said, I had faith because I was following God's truth. So I just believed he would take care of you.
Yeah,
Just blind faith. It's just poison.
it is. It's poison. Well, I didn't mean to blame your mother exactly. I was just, more thinking
So
about the
I love my
mindset.
mom. Let me just make it very clear. I love my mom to this day. She died in 2019. Again, weak-minded, joined another cult. Love her, but she has things to answer for. She has a son who was murdered by the cult. She has a son who is spending life in prison because of this cult that she brought us into and raised us in. And she never stood up and got us out. And I did run away from the cult when I was 19. And I remember at one point, when I was talking to her again, because for a long time she wouldn't talk to me because I was an apostate, but I ran away before the cult disintegrated. And I feel really proud of myself for having the guts to do that. And I'm like, don't you feel? Are you not proud of me for that? And because even then she had to acknowledge it was a cult and it was evil and wrong. And she said, but if you would have stayed, now you would actually be in the truth, because she joined another cult. And she thought I would be with her in that organization if I had stayed. So she was still disappointed that I left. So that was disappointing to me to hear
Yeah,
that. But she did. She's told me, I remember for my birthday, I think I turned 40 or something. And she said she was proud of the woman that I had become. And she still
yeah,
belonged to a cult. So yeah.
uh-huh.
That
Um,
meant a lot. Isn't that weird how you care about that from your parent, even as a grown-ass adult?
yeah,
Don't ask me why. That validation just matters.
it does. Um, well, let's talk about when you decided to leave.
I'm gonna
What
first
can,
plug in my computer because I'm running out of battery.
yep, go
Yes,
for it.
second. Plugged it into the wall, but did not plug it into my computer.
Mm.
All right, let me get a little sip of water. Okay. All right. Now we're ready.
Awesome. Yeah, if you just want to kind of take us through the story of what made you leave and when you left and where you went.
Sure. So when they shoved me out of the mission field completely unfairly and gaslit me and said I didn't have the Spirit of God and said I was allowing the spirit of the devil in the mission field, it was all pure BS, of course, like not true in any way, shape, or form. And my companion knew it. She had a lot of heart for me and realized that what was happening to me didn't feel right to her either. And that was her father and her mother doing this to me. And she had a lot of compassion for me. So I I was thrown out, and then I said, okay, well, at least I'll be able to go finish my senior year of high school. And keep in mind, we didn't always go to school, like, or we were in school in Mexico, or we were in Mexico not in school, or we were in Oklahoma with no school. And we were just in and out of school. Sometimes we would be put in, and I loved school. So I always tried to get my mom to put me into school. So I ended up going to school more than some of my other siblings who didn't push for it as hard because they didn't like it as much. I loved it. And so I skipped ninth grade completely, never went to a day of ninth grade, but I still got enough credits and everything to where I could do my senior year of high school and graduate. Um, so, and Dan's wife in the mission field, one of the things she said to me is, well, you just might need to accept that you are not celestial material. And I'm like, so why am I giving my all to this? Like literally, I had no money. We weren't paid. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't own a car. Even my clothing could be taken from me. Like owned nothing. Nothing was mine. And so I'm literally thinking I'm consecrating my all to God, like serving him with my heart, my mind, and strength with full sincerity and no bitterness. Like, so when they did this to me in the mission field, it really made me think, oh, well, I can get to the celestial kingdom because I'm apparently not celestial material, though that's what I've been told all my life, was that I was born under the covenant and I was a celestial spirit. Like, they're contradicting that now. So I'm like, why do I need to give it my heart, my mind, and strength to this then? If I'm not even worthy of the celestial kingdom, I'll end up in terrestrial, Oh well, it's not what I wanted, but that's what I was told. So I just thought, okay, well, when I get back to Denver from Utah to mission, I'll just go finish my senior year of high school at least. And I had all these dreams of having a bank account, establishing credit, owning a car in my name, like having a new pair of glasses. I've had LASIK surgery, but I had really, really poor eyesight. Like I was -10. Like to see things, I had to like bring them this close to my face. It was really poor eyesight. And I had a pair of glasses that was broken and literally in like 3 places. And I had the lens that would constantly pop out, but they didn't take care of your needs. It was like, just give them enough so that they can work. And all the money goes to, favors Dan and his family. And we're just left with whatever. And so I just wanted a new pair of glasses. There's a few things that I wanted. Um, but I just thought at least I want to be able to go to high school and finish my senior year because I knew college was not in the question, but high school was, I thought, but they wouldn't let me. And I would beg my mom. I would just beg her, please, please talk to them. And, the higher ups, the ones in charge, please talk to them. I don't, I'll work. I'll work after school. I'll work on the weekends. I'll get any work done that I need to for the cult. I didn't call it a cult, of course, but just let me go finish my senior year. And she said, no, no, no. And then at one point I said, well, I want to leave then. Because my sister, who had gotten out before me, had left me her phone number. She had snuck me her phone number. She was in Houston, and I was never going to call it because she was an apostate, and and I knew that that would go against God. But I did keep it in my little treasured box, and because I didn't have much treasure, so one of them was my sister's phone number. So I had told my mom I called my sister and that I was thinking about going to Houston. And oh, then she was like, "No, no, no, you can't do that. You can't leave the kingdom of God." And so they got together with the people that cared about me, and they got me into a meeting, and they said, "We'll start paying you $75 a week." Because that's what I said. If you'll pay me some money, I'll do a correspondence course or something to get my high school diploma. Um, and then when they agreed to pay me $75 a week, they told Dan and his wife that were still in the mission field where they kicked me out of, and they told them that they'd agreed to start paying me, and they said, "Well, you don't have the power to make that agreement with her." So when they reneged on that, I called my sister and said, "Get me out of here." So she had her mother-in-law, who was never part of the cult. She eloped with a little boy who was not, he was like 21 and she's 19 or something. And they eloped and ran off to Houston. So his mother-in-law that lived in Denver snuck by the house when she knew nobody else would be there but me and left me $50 to take a taxi because again I had no car. I had no way to get to an airport. And so she snuck me $50 to take a taxi, and Kathleen, my sister, bought a ticket for me to go to Houston. And I didn't do this without my mother's permission, though, because I would beg her every night. Like, beg her, like, let me go to school, let me figure out a way to finish high school, or just let me go to Denver and I'll just get these things done on my list, establish credit, get a bank account, own a car, buy some clothes, get a new pair of glasses, just really responsible things. And then after I wore her, because my mom loved me, like she was very cult minded and all that, but I broke her down because I just broke her heart because I was so, so sad and cried to her every night. And she finally said, like under her breath, I guess you better go. And that
Yeah.
was all I needed. I would not break the commandment of honor your mother and your father, but she gave me permission. And it was within a couple days I was out of there. And she thought I would come back. She thought I would repent and come back. And I thought I would too, because I still was a full believer. But I never did.
Yeah. Thinking of your story and just those kind of situations where you just wish you could have a little bit of autonomy in your life and, get yourself a car and do something for yourself and not only that, but have the freedom to not feel like the world's about to crush you tomorrow. And everything you do is wrong. Every way you turn is wrong. When I think back being in those situations, I'm just like, fuck all of that. Fuck those cults, all of that shit. I can't bear the idea of being this 17-year-old kid that just can't do anything. It's just ridiculous.
Powerless. You have no power, no control.
It's more than just not being able to do anything though. It's constant pressure that you're so evil or something.
Yeah.
And you're just like, get me out of this. Kind of, and you feel like you should be there. You're kind of in bondage to be there. And so when you can finally kind of see past it, then it's like such a relief when you finally get out from under it, So you go to Houston, and can you kind of just tell us a little bit about how you kind of rebuilding your life and your family relationships and whatnot?
So my sister that I moved into is precious. She and her husband were so good to me. They were in their 20s themselves. They had a couple babies, and I helped them with their children, and then their little business that they were trying to grow. They were just really supportive and really good to me. And I went through depression. Like I was severely depressed because I had to leave my family and I knew I couldn't talk to them. And I loved them. It's like you have to break away from family that you really, really care about. My little siblings were there, and that was devastating to me to leave them behind. Because they felt like they were kind of mine, too, because you act as a surrogate mother sometimes to the younger siblings. So I literally just adored them. And couldn't speak to them, couldn't have any contact with them for years because of I was an apostate. And but my sister was really supportive. She didn't try to, I still believed everything, all the nonsense. And she was just really sweet and really patient with that. They were going to a Christian church, and I kind of started going to the Christian church with them. And I had my list of goals. Like I literally had a notebook paper with all those things that I mentioned: build credit, get a bank account, buy a car, get new glasses, buy these clothes. Just real basic stuff. And I was 19 at that time. It was appropriate for me to be wanting to have some of those things. It was very developmentally appropriate. Get my high school diploma. I got myself enrolled in a school where it was like a private school, so I could work for my sister and her husband and do that at the same time. And so I did end up getting that education that was really mattered to me, and started my whole list of things. Oh, I wanted to get my real name. We did not use LeBaron because, we were polygamous. So we used my mother's previous husband's last name on
Okay.
for ourselves. So I wanted to get my real name, get a driver's license, Social Security. I wanted to be legal and do that all properly. And that was another thing on my list. And the last thing on my list was get a library card. I wanted a library card. I love to read. Still to this day, love reading. So that was on my list. So one day Kathleen was in my, I don't know if she wants me saying her name, but
Okay, I cut it out.
she might not. My sister, my beautiful, lovely sister, um, she found the notebook on my bed with my list of things that I wanted to get done. And I had been there about 6 months or so. And she said, Celia, the last thing on your list is to get a library card. That's the only thing you haven't done yet. And she just was so proud of me for having this list. She thought that was just super responsible. And so she just dropped everything that she had going on that day. She said, we are going to the library today and we're going to get you a library card. So anyway, I did have a car. I had bought a little car, a little Toyota Corolla Tercel, a little beige one that had a little spot with rust on it. Didn't have air conditioning, vinyl seats, no air conditioning in Houston where it's hot and humid, but it was mine. $2,250 is what I paid for that. I still remember that I negotiated them down from $2,500 to $2,250 and had it. It was in my name. It was paid for, but I still didn't have insurance on it. I still had to park it because I had to save up now to get insurance on it. So she drove me to get my library card. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
and then once you're out, like you're a full believer, like 100% brainwashed, but you get out because it's too abusive. And honestly, I preferred to die than to stay there. Like I was never suicidal, but I really thought death would be better than living that life where I had nothing. Like none of my goals, none of my dreams. So I was a reader. I knew what other people had. We didn't have TV or anything like that, but I was a reader. So I knew the outside world was different. And I just had these dreams for myself that could not, and I would have given them all up. I would have given them all up for God. But guess what? I wasn't celestial material. So why should I sacrifice everything anymore? I wasn't willing to if I wasn't celestial. So that's what got me out. But again, I still believed everything. In fact, the little bit I was paid by my sister and her husband, and they provided room and board and loved on me and took care of me and all that. I sent back 10% tithing to
Did
the
you?
cult for quite a
Oh,
while. I was still full believing in
okay.
everything. But once you're out and you have now some outside influences and you can now think about things and not just push every negative thought down, um, you can't help but your mind expands and you realize that you start questioning, and now it's a safer place to question. So once the questions started coming to my mind, I stopped shutting them off and saying, but they were killing people. Was that really okay? And we would lie constantly to outsiders about everything, And I'm like, do I really want to live that life again where I have to lie to people? Like, no. Do I want to use a fake name? Do I want to? And I was just like, that just did not appeal to me. And I could never go back. My mom tried to get me to go back. She wanted me back after about 6 months, which is what I told her. Maybe it would take me 6 months to get all my goals, met. Um, and anyway, but yeah, I
Well,
could never go back.
over time, you get more and more out yourself, but there's still a lot of drama happening within your family. Like the 4 o'clock murders still have to happen, and
Yes.
Dave Jordan, who was, I guess, kind of a real abuser to you.
Dan Jordan.
Oh, Dan Jordan,
Dan
sorry.
Jordan.
Dan Jordan, who was a real abuser to you, ends up getting killed. What do you think when he gets killed? Are you like, I don't care, or
Well, honestly, I was sad for his children and his wives. Like he had 8 wives. I was related to all of them but one. So, I had nieces and nephews that were his children. And So you can't help but feel sad for them. But for me, like, no, not one bit sorry that he was gone. But again, it affected more people than just me. So, but then after that, that's when the 4 o'clock murders happened. I was already living in Houston. I was out of the cult and I was living my life and trying to just build it from the ground up with some support of family members that were really great. Um, Thankfully, I had somewhere to run to when I had the courage to run. Um, but yeah, there were other people that still believed in my father's teachings, other siblings that were teenagers or even younger when he passed, when he died in prison. And so they still believed in his teachings, and they knew that there was that all those revelations that he wrote while he was in prison. They didn't understand that he was completely mentally deranged by then. He'd gone off the deep end. They didn't understand that. So they still thought they had to live by that and obey him and obey God and carry out hits. So there's this ragtag of teenage kids that were still carrying out hits, and they're the ones that killed Dan Jordan and then came back and then took out Mark, Dwayne, my half brother Ed, and the little girl Jenny. And anyway, so yeah, that was definitely one of the saddest days of my life, was because Dwayne was, when I was a little girl, I used to say I was going to marry him because he was like 8 or 10 years older than me and was just so sweet to the little kids. Like, just got on his knees and played with them, and he was just so precious. Would buy us candy and helped me build a little candy store in front of our little house in Mexico at one point and taught us how to count the money, and so we could, buy more candy with it so that we could have a little business up there on our porch. He would ride me on his bike. He would, I don't know, he was just so precious. But
And they
um
kind of brought that to you, huh? Because you were down in Houston and they came over there and killed them.
yeah.
Were you worried you were going to get killed, or?
No, because I knew I wasn't an apostate to them. I was an apostate to Dan, but Dan at that point, even though he had killed in the past, he was not trying to carry out any blood atonements that I'm aware of. He didn't talk about doing that, although he taught blood atonements. Like, Dan Jordan is the one that brainwashed me the most of anybody. In his all-day church on Sunday, priesthood and 10 Commandments and economics, like all-day church. Like, he brainwashed me more than anybody. He believed in it all. He was ruthless. He was violent, but he had not gotten to that point where he was going to start carrying out blood atonements. And so at least there's that. And he said, even though all of his wives were teenagers when he married them, one was as young as 14. And in our group, we did believe in marrying teenagers. As yeah, 14 is the youngest. I was ordered to get married when I was 14. But I didn't end up getting married because then my dad died and everything fractured, and who I was supposed to marry ended up in a different group. So I didn't get married. But one of the things Dan Jordan said was no more teenagers getting married, even though all his wives were teenagers, including my sisters and half sisters and cousins that he married. But he's just like, no more teenage brides. So anyway, I missed out on getting married in the cult because of that. So I'm very grateful to that. Those young children of my father's that still ended up in this other fractured part of the cult, still thought they had to carry out God's orders that my dad laid out while he was in prison. So they continued that. can I just say though, and I don't want to minimize what happened. Like I said, that was a devastating time for me. Like seriously, I loved Mark. I loved Dwayne. And my half brother, I guess I loved him too, but I did not even have the same relationship I did with him as I did with Dan and Dwayne. I'm not Dan, sorry, Dwayne and Mark. Um, Dwayne and Mark were kind-hearted, good men who didn't ever try to abuse children, were not violent, were not sexually abusive. They were good-hearted human beings and were a good influence on us. So they mattered a lot to me. And then, I'm sorry.
We're good.
And Dwayne's daughter, Jenny, was taken out. That wasn't on purpose. It was, my little brother, who was 17 at the time, his orders were not to leave any witnesses. So when she woke up screaming, oh my goodness, I don't know if I um, just little sweet Jenny. Anyway, so yeah,
Yeah,
that-
no, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so basically these 4 o'clock murders happen, and
yeah,
you had kind of started to get your life put back together.
yeah.
And did you say Jenny was your younger sister?
No. Jenny was Dwayne's
Oh,
little
okay.
daughter,
Oh, yeah.
and I loved Dwayne. I loved Dwayne, and I loved his wife. Really, really sweet, kind-hearted people.
So
So
she kind of ended up just getting caught up in the crossfire, or being in the wrong place at the wrong time, kind of.
yeah, that was not part of the plan. In fact, my brother who carried out that hit later told me that that started making him wonder whether this was actually God ordained. Because he's like, well, what was she doing there anyway? So, um, anyway,
Well,
I do want to say that all of those that teenage kids that were still following my dad and believing in him, every one of them now, everybody knows that dad was a false prophet. He was full of shit. His whole doctrine, his whole religion was garbage. All of us know that. There's no one that believes in his cult anymore. And most of them don't even believe anything about Mormonism. Many of us don't believe in any religion.
uh,
So we've been able to cleanse our minds of all of that. And
what do
some are
you,
still in prison though for what they did.
some of
But
your brothers and,
even though they're not a threat to society, because that was the only thing that made my family threatening, was the brainwashing and believing sincerely that they were serving God.
now that you've been out this long, uh, you've built a whole different life. Everything's been changed for several
Mhm.
years. Your
Yeah.
brothers have kind of all done their different things, and everything's kind of been settled. What do you still feel the most misunderstood about, or do you sometimes feel that people judge you for who you are still to this day? How do you feel about your relationships with the world in general, and as well as
Mhm.
like your relationships with your family?
Mhm. So I've reconnected with all of my surviving, most, not all, but most of my surviving siblings. My father had 51 children. Not all of them survived the cult. Some took their own lives in the cult. Some were executed by the cult, like Rebecca, for thinking of trying to get out. Um, it was it was a very dangerous way to grow up. Um, but all those that survived, like, I care so much about my siblings, and I know that compared to what others have experienced, I got off kind of easy. I was abused and all of that, and I was touched inappropriately a couple times as a child, um, but not by my father, but, by other members, and, but the worst things didn't happen to me. I was never sent to kill anyone. I was not blood atoned for getting out. I didn't even end up married in the cult, just by the skin of my teeth. So I just feel a lot of compassion for my siblings that, or anybody that was sent to do a blood atonement that they believed was for God and forced into it against their will even. Because I don't think the world looks with compassion often on my family and my siblings. We're just like painted with Ervil LeBaron brush because that's what we were doing as children, is following whatever he said, like children do. And so that hurts my feelings. And I do want to make sure that people know my siblings are not evil. Even the ones in prison are not evil humans, um, any more evil than I am. And I live a very law-abiding life. Again, I have had my background check done for the type of work that I, did finally in the end, in my career. Um, and I just want people to understand that this was not their choice. We didn't choose who our parents were. So I have a lot of compassion and I wish there was more understanding about that. And I'm really sad. Like, I know that what they did was horrific, but I understand why they did it. And it wasn't because, again, they were evil. So it breaks my heart that I have people serving life sentences in prison and I get to be out here living my free life, raising my children outside of a cult, helping them. Like, I have one of my daughters, my redhead daughter is, she has a master's degree. She is, a psychologist and she does therapy and helps people that suffered through trauma. And she's putting out goodness into the world, you know? So for me, it's like, here my father was creating trauma and evil and pain in the world, but I produce something that's doing the opposite. So I just think people should look again at 35 years of my family and my siblings not trying to hurt anybody and living out here, building lives, trying to be good humans.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And I think you have a good heart. I think most humans have a good heart. I watched this video the other day that really made an impression on me of this doctor who does brain scans, and that he was saying he there was this kid that basically was saying he was going to hurt people and he wanted to, shoot up the school or something like that. And he went and did a brain scan on him and then got him on the correct brain treatment. And then he was back to normal. And I think a lot of these situations really come down to that. Like, most humans, even the ones that do horrific things, probably have some sort of a brain problem or some sort of genuine problem that causes them to hurt other people. And I'm not saying we should justify the bad in the
No,
world, but
I do not justify my father and Dan. Like,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't care what brain problems they had. I do not give them a pass. I don't even fully give my own mother a pass for the
Uh-huh.
things that she knew of that were happening and she sat by and allowed it.
Yeah. I guess my point just being that, we need to try to understand people. And of course, some people have to go to jail and some people have to get punished, and that's
To
consequences.
protect
But,
society. Yeah, we don't want
right.
to live in fear. Yeah, I believe in that.
Uh, what do you think is the difference between a cult and a religion now that you're out?
So, whoa, you're asking the tough questions. My goodness,
I mean,
Jaden.
if you're uncomfortable with it, that's fine.
No,
I
no,
just,
no. I am going to say I don't believe in any religion. I don't think every religion is a cult, like my brother said in the documentary. He's like, all religions are cults. I think cults are more about how much control they have over your life. And ours was a cult to the max. Like, it was full control of my life. Um, so if you belong to a religion that's more benign and believes in goodness and loving your neighbor and all that, I think that's can be a good thing. If it helps you be a better human and have a happier life, then yeah, I don't have a problem with it. It's when they start trying to control your life, and especially controlling you to the point of convincing you to do bad things, harmful things. Basically, my religion is to be kind to your neighbor and live an honest life,
Yeah.
because I don't adhere to any religion at all.
Yeah, and I pretty much agree with you there. Uh,
Okay.
Now I have kind of a unique question. Um, I don't want you to take it wrong,
Oh,
but it's what personality traits do you think make people more vulnerable to cults? Um,
it's a good question. It's people that want to be led, people that don't have a strong sense of themselves. I think my mother was weak minded and probably a loving person. Like everybody in the cult would agree, she was one of the more loving people. Um, but she was willing to abdicate her power to others. And most of her children couldn't do that. Like even me, as sincere and as true believing and everything as I was, I wanted to have a little bit of power and say over my own life. And I just couldn't abdicate it completely to somebody else. So I think there are smart people that join cults, but I think they have to be or it's those that want to get themselves in so they can take charge and have power or abuse children and things like that that are attracted to cults. So some things are very nefarious, like obviously they want control or they want that power over others. So I think that's a trait. And those that are followers just are not strong-minded and not don't know how to take or don't want the responsibility of taking charge of their own lives. That's what I would say. I've never had to think about that. Now I'm going to think about it now and have a better answer, but that's my answer for today.
yeah,
That's a
no, that
very, very good question, though.
yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you. Mhm.
Is there anything important that you feel like I missed or skipped over that you really wanted to make a point on, or
You let me make my biggest point, which is we were born into a family that we had no control over and forced us into these horrific belief system and maneuvered and got us to do terrible things. I'm speaking for my siblings. I never did a terrible thing. That's why I can speak up. But I hope people will look on my family and on my siblings with more compassion.
yes, and I totally agree that we should look at everybody with compassion and in their own individual human rights. Like me, I don't want to be judged for what my father did. And actually,
I feel the same way.
yeah,
Yeah, even though you look a lot like him, I mean, how can I
uh-huh,
say? But I'm just
right,
like, I will not judge him by his father. I will not because I don't want to be judged by my father. That's not fair.
yeah.
So,
Well, where can people find you on TikTok or any other business or social media that you want to shout out right now?
oh, I am on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, Celia LeBaron, or sometimes I think it's CK LeBaron. But and I am writing my book. I'm in the early stages. It'll be a while, but to get a publishing deal, you do kind of have to have some followers. But so, and I especially have a heart for wanting to connect with other cult survivors and polygamy survivors because I think we have so much in common. And I'd have a heart for that. I feel a kinship like with others that have the strength and have the gumption to get out.
Do
So.
you know your TikTok handle?
No, isn't that terrible?
Oh,
Obviously, I'm here for you. I'm
I
not here for
I
me, but I'm
know.
gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up.
I usually like to let people shout it out on there.
You're so sweet. Like, let me even see. Yeah, I have it. It's at CK LeBaron. Celia K like Christina with a K, and then LeBaron is my TikTok. I need to start posting there more, and I intend to. That's my goal. But yeah, but I'm also on Facebook and on Instagram. I post less on Instagram probably than the other two.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, yeah, everybody go follow Celia. Did I say that right?
You did. You got
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Excellent.
I'm still learning how to pronounce things right, honestly.
Yeah.
Go follow Celia and leave her some nice comments below. Tell her that you appreciate her sharing her story, because we all support each other, sharing each other's stories, and we want to leave kindness to each other.
Yes.
Thanks so much for being here. Any final thoughts or last words?
Well, just thank you so much. And I just want to say I'm super proud of you for
Thank
getting
you.
yourself out. I can't wait to hear more about your story. But I love watching your TikToks and seeing what you do. I love that you're getting the word out. I love that so many people from the different organizations are connecting and supporting each other. And I just want to be part of that. I love this movement.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you
Thank you.
guys on the next one. Peace out.